All right, let's just jump right in. We're always chasing the next big thing in leadership, right? The latest book, the hottest new framework. But what if? What if the best advice isn't new at all? Today, we're going to crack open a really old text from the Greek historian Xenophon to uncover the wisdom of Cyrus the Great, the guy who founded the first Persian Empire.
I know, it's kind of a wild thought, isn't it? I mean, we live in a world that's all about disruption and innovation, and we're supposed to believe the most effective strategies come from a time of, swords and chariots? Well, Xenophon absolutely believed it. And get this, his take on Cyrus inspired some of the biggest names in history. We're talking Julius Caesar, even Benjamin Franklin.
So you hear ancient conqueror, and what do you picture? Probably some iron-fisted tyrant, right? But the Cyrus that Xenophon shows us, he's something else entirely. This wasn't some paranoid prince clinging to power through cruelty. Nope. His empire was built on something that, honestly, a lot of leaders today are still trying to figure out.
And this right here, this is the key difference. You've got the whole cynical playbook on one side, all about fear and manipulation. But the Cyrus model, it's the complete opposite. It's all about earning loyalty, not just demanding it. It's about building your people up, because you know that makes the whole team, the whole mission, stronger. And that's really the heart of what we're going to get into.
So where does a guy like this even start? Well, not where you'd think. It wasn't on the battlefield. It was inside his own head. Long before he ever led an army, Cyrus was focused, almost obsessed, with mastering himself. That was his real training.
And man, the level of preparation is just incredible. He wasn't just sitting around. Xenophon tells us he spent years just learning. He'd pull aside merchants to ask about faraway places. He'd read every piece of history he could get his hands on. In fact, the smart guys at his dad's court literally called him the well of knowledge. See, he wasn't just waiting for his moment to arrive. He was actively building the foundation for a future that only he could see.
And this all came from the advice his father, King Cambyses, gave him. And this wasn't just, generic be a good person advice. This was a real code. He was taught, rely on yourself. Don't make promises you can't keep. And this one is huge. Get people to want to follow you because they respect your wisdom, not because they're afraid of you. Be there for your people in the good times and the bad. And when it comes to your enemies, be as smart and cunning as a hunter. This was basically his personal operating system.
Okay, so all that inner work is great, but how did it actually play out? Well, the moment Cyrus got his first command, his first move tells you everything. He didn't just start barking orders, no. His goal was to light a fire, to turn what was just another mission into something much, much bigger, a movement. And what he says here, it's just so bold. He doesn't just do the easy thing and say, hey, let's be like our great ancestors. Instead, he flips the script. He basically tells them, look, those guys were good, but we're going to be better. Their fight never ended. Ours is going to pay off big time. He's giving them permission to be incredibly ambitious and connecting the country's success directly to their own.
But a big vision is one thing. You've got to be able to back it up. And Cyrus wasn't just some dreamer. He was a stone-cold genius on the battlefield, always looking for an advantage.
So his first big move? He completely changes the gear of his regular soldiers. Think about it. He takes guys who were meant to fight from way back and turns them into a terrifying force up close. And this was more than just a new strategy. It was a cultural earthquake. Suddenly, the line between the fancy officers and the everyday soldiers got blurry. They became one single, deadly team. And if you really want to see how different he was, just look at him next to his uncle, Syazarees. It's like night and day. The enemy shows up, the uncle panics, wants to hide. Cyrus? He's ready to go. The uncle's plan is just charge straight ahead. Cyrus is like, no, let's be smart about this. And the best part? After they win, his uncle just wants to break out the wine. Cyrus is already planning how to press their advantage. That's the difference between just being in charge and actually leading.
This next bit is just a masterclass. Cyrus spots a huge problem. His army is great at winning, but they've got no horses, so they can't chase down the enemy. So, how do you turn a whole army of infantry into cavalry? You don't just command it. Watch his steps. First, he points out the weakness. Then, he shows them what's in it for them. More loot, more glory. He listens to their worries and shuts them down. And finally, he turns being a horseman into the coolest thing you could be. Boom. A total military revolution, all done through smart persuasion.
But look, being a military genius, that's only half of it. The real secret to why his empire actually lasted was all about how he led. He had this incredible mix of being tough, but also humane. And that's how he turned people he defeated into his biggest fans.
And here's the story that's just a fantastic lesson for anyone in charge. After a big win, who does Cyrus give the biggest shout out to? You'd think it's the guy who fought the hardest, right? No. It's a general named Chrysanthos. Why? Because he was about to land the final blow on an enemy when the retreat was called, and he followed the order instantly. By rewarding the process, the perfect discipline, he sent a message to everyone: trust and discipline are what matter most. That's how you build a team you can count on.
He was also always hammering home this idea about greed. He told his men, look, if you're just rushing in to grab whatever you can, you become predictable, you become weak. By teaching them to hold back, to stay disciplined, they stayed focused on the real prize, total victory, not just a pocket full of gold. It's all about the mission over that instant reward. And this next part might be his most radical idea of all, especially for the time. In an era where winning meant burning everything to the ground, Cyrus's approach was just mind-blowing. He didn't enslave the people he conquered. He freed them. He let them keep their homes, their farms. All they had to do was hand over their weapons and agree to live in peace. And this wasn't him being soft, it was pure genius. He turned millions of potential rebels into a stable, productive part of his empire. So, you add it all up, right? The self-control, the huge vision, the smart tactics, and that humane strength, what you get is a leadership style that's just completely different from the cynical way of doing things, not just back then, but even today.
And really, this is the bottom line. What Xenophon is trying to tell us through the story of Cyrus is that ruling by fear is brittle. It shatters the second you're not looking. But the power you build on respect, the kind that makes people feel like they're part of something important, that power lasts. It gets you people who want to be on your team, not people who are just forced to be.
Which brings us right back to today. You look around and it feels like the world rewards the loudest person in the room, the quick and dirty win, the ruthless move. So the question is, could this 2,500-year-old idea, this model of building real trust, of focusing on character, of thinking about the long game, could that actually be the ultimate competitive advantage?
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're opening up Xenophon's Cyropedia, the education of Cyrus the Great. And this isn't just some dusty old history text.
Not at all. It's really seen as this, well, blueprint for leadership, ethical leadership, successful leadership. You know, people like Caesar, Benjamin Franklin, they studied this thing for centuries.
Yeah, so we're diving into the sources today to figure out why him. Why was this conqueror, Cyrus, held up as the ideal leader, the model for managing people, building something that lasts?
It's the sheer reputation, I think, that jumps out. When you look at how different cultures saw him long after he was gone, it's pretty astonishing.
Right, the sources are clear. Persians called him father, Greeks lawgiver, but it's the conquered people that really stand out.
Absolutely. The Babylonians called him liberator, the Jews anointed of the Lord because he freed them from Babylon. That kind of respect from people you've defeated, that's rare.
Almost unheard of, really, for someone who turned the world upside down like he did. And I think the philosophical angle here is huge. We look at the sources, that cuneiform cylinder, where he talks about treating the Babylonians humanely.
And that's now seen as, well, mankind's very first charter of human rights. That's the claim.
That really sets the stage. Because when you put Xenophon's work next to, say, Machiavelli's The Prince much later,
it's a stark contrast. Xenophon's Cyrus uses cunning, yes, but it's paired with integrity. Machiavelli kind of narrows the focus, suggesting rulers might need deceit and fear internally. Cyrus aimed his tricks outward at the enemy. Big difference.
Okay, let's dig into that foundation then. Cyrus's character. He wasn't born with a silver spoon, exactly.
No, the sources describe a pretty strict Persian warrior culture. His father, Cambyses, trained him. There's that story about self-control. You know, he spends time in wealthy media, sees all the luxury, but comes back perfectly happy with simple Persian food.
Discipline wasn't just accidental.
Not at all. And he was smart, really smart. They called him the well of knowledge at his father's court. He approached building an empire almost like an intellectual exercise.
He actually said he'd built it in thought, long before I began to win an empire in reality.
Exactly. He saw success as basically the result of thinking harder and preparing better than anyone else.
So that seems like the Socratic influence coming through Xenophon, right? This idea of conquering more with your mind than just brute force, mental powers over strength of sinews.
That's the core of it.
But does being the smartest guy in the room automatically make you a leader?
people will follow into battle.
Not automatically, no, but it builds the right kind of authority. His father taught him the greatest thing isn't just ruling, it's guiding men, making them all they ought to be. And here's the key phrase Xenophon uses: voluntary obedience.
Voluntary obedience. Meaning,
Meaning people naturally follow someone they genuinely believe is wiser and knows the way better than they do. Like trusting a pilot on a ship, Xenophon says. It's not about forcing them or bribing them.
it's about trust and competence. If they think following you leads to disaster, no amount of shouting or money will get their real commitment.
Precisely. Cyrus built that trust by showing, again and again, that his plans worked out better for everyone.
Okay, so that takes us right into how he actually did things in the field. He clearly got human nature. The loyalty of followers comes from self-interest.
Absolutely. So the leader's job one. Make sure your people are secure, healthy, and have high morale.
And security starts with the basics, like food. That lesson with his uncle Syazarees seems critical here.
Oh yeah, the logistics lesson. Syazarees, king of the Medes, says, "Don't worry, I'll feed your army." But Cyrus's father, Cambyses, steps in, warns him, err on the side of self-reliance.
Even with a reliable ally, why was that so important?
Because dependence is always a weakness, strategically. Cambyses knew if the food supply failed, if the army's stomach went empty, as Xenophon puts it, Cyrus's authority, which is built on being competent and wise, would just evaporate.
You can't lead hungry, disillusioned troops.
You can't. If you hand off responsibility for something that critical, you're handing off your fate. A leader has to own the things that keep the team functioning. Basic survival, morale.
That feels incredibly relevant today for anyone running. Well, anything. A project, a company. Control the factors that build or break internal trust.
Totally. And this focus on trust really shaped how he managed his troops, which was pretty revolutionary for the time.
Like rearming the commoners as heavy infantry. That must have caused ripples.
Oh, huge ripples. The sources say it risked seismic fractures in the homeland's class system. You're basically empowering the lower classes militarily.
So how did he handle the political side of that, the pushback from the nobles?
By deliberately blurring the lines, making them share experiences. He ordered the noble officers to sleep right alongside the common soldiers in these big tents, sometimes 30 guys together.
Wow. No private quarters.
Nope. His logic was if you live together, eat the same stuff, face the same hardships, you build real bonds, you create a common conscience. Hard to look down on someone you shared a tent with all night.
Shared discipline, shared experience as the great leveler. And we see that with food too, right? They didn't eat until they'd earned it, sweated for it, through drills or work.
And when they did feast, everyone got the same quality, the same amount. Noble, commoner, didn't matter.
Which leads to that interesting story about dealing with dissent. Aglattatus, the gloomy officer.
Yeah, the cynic at the banquet.
Yeah.
Complaining that all the joking and good humor was pointless.
How do you handle that? An officer basically bringing down the mood in front of everyone without just shutting him down hard.
Cyrus's response was brilliant, really. He didn't attack Aglattatus personally. Instead, he sort of widened the lens, started talking about what makes someone an imposter.
Okay.
He said an imposter isn't someone who laughs too much. It's someone who pretends to have wealth or courage they don't possess, or someone who starts big projects they can never finish. He used the cynicism to actually reinforce his standards for authentic leadership.
Wow. Using wit to diffuse and define all at once.
Yeah.
That's sophisticated.
Very. It sets the standard instead of just silencing the critic.
All right, let's shift to tactics. How did this integrity mesh with, well, the cunning side of warfare? His father taught him virtue for friends and allies, every sort of trick against enemies.
And that's the key distinction. This is what Xenophon calls high cunning. It's not the vicious stuff Machiavelli might advocate, like betraying your own people or ruling through internal fear. That destroys the voluntary obedience we talked about.
So high cunning is directed outward at the enemy.
Exactly. Cyrus maintained total integrity and transparency with his own side, built that trust, but against the enemy. He used every psychological trick, every bit of deception he could muster.
The ethical line is drawn internally. Protect your own people's trust at all costs. Okay, give us an example of this psychology in action, advancing on Babylon.
Right. His general Gabreus was terrified, said it was like a kitten attacking a lion. Babylon was thought to be impregnable.
But Cyrus pushed for a direct attack.
What? He read the enemy's psychology. They'd lost to him before. He figured their huge numbers wouldn't make them feel strong. It would make them feel trapped. It would amplify the panic when things went wrong. He used their fear against them.
Clever. And he wasn't afraid of new tech either.
Not at all. Introduce those chariots with scythes on the wheels. Basically, mobile lawnmowers designed to shred enemy infantry lines.
Ouch.
And his masterstroke, tactically. The camel corps.
Camels, really?
Yeah, the sources are emphatic. Enemy horses couldn't stand the sight or smell of them. They just panicked, bolted, and completely disrupted the enemy cavalry, caused chaos, and led to a rout.
Okay. Innovation, psychology.
Yeah.
It all culminates in taking Babylon itself.
Almost a
Fortified city maybe in the world at that time. Huge walls, the Euphrates River running right through it.
And his first move was pure misdirection. He starts digging this massive trench around the city. Looks like he's settling in for a standard years-long siege. Made the Babylonians complacent.
But the real plan was tied to their culture, wasn't it?
Exactly. That huge annual festival where everyone in the city basically got completely drunk.
Perfect timing.
While they were partying, Cyrus had his engineers divert the Euphrates River into that trench system he'd dug. Overnight, the water level inside the city just drops.
Leaving the riverbed.
Muddy, yes, but passable. A ready-made secret highway straight into the heart of the city. He told his troops, strike at the heart of opposing power. They marched right up the riverbed into the palace complex.
And found the king in his court.
Drunk, celebrating around a huge fire, completely oblivious until it was too late.
A stunning victory. Not by breaking walls, but by brilliant foresight and exploiting the enemy's weakness to their complacency. Minimal damage to the city too, right?
Relatively minimal, yeah. Crushed the leadership swiftly.
So Babylon falls, empire consolidated. But even Cyrus, at the height of his success, makes a major mistake.
He does. And maybe this is the most important lesson of all for leaders. In the excitement after all these wins, he basically steamrolls his own uncle, Syazarees, the king of the Medes. He takes the Median cavalry, Syazarees' best troops, without asking permission, just assumes command, takes the glory, leaves his uncle feeling powerless, defenseless, and deeply humiliated.
Ouch. So when they finally meet, how does Syazarees react? Anger. Threats.
No, it's worse, in a way. He confronts Cyrus with just profound sadness, hurt, accuses him of forgetting who helped him, of stealing his rightful honor.
And Cyrus, who's now basically the most powerful man in the world, what does he do?
He crumbles, not defensively, but internally. The sources say he was hit with real shame and guilt. All his justifications just fell away. He flat out confessed to Syazarees, I was carried away by my own sense of destiny. Admitted his ambition blinded him to his obligations to his ally.
That level of self-awareness, admitting fault when you're on top, that's remarkable.
It saved the alliance, he apologized, he made amends, he rebuilt the relationship. It shows that real leadership isn't about never messing up. It's about having the character to recover from your mistakes, especially the ego-driven ones.
Controlling that ambition, that seems to be a recurring theme after the conquest, too. He worried about his team getting soft.
Absolutely. Very aware of the temptations of success, warned his inner circle constantly against ditching the hard, heroic life for laziness and luxury.
So he put systems in place to fight that complacency.
He did, that famous rule. You must never sit down to eat until you've exercised both your body and your mind. For everyone in command. A daily, physical reminder that leadership requires constant effort, mentally and physically.
And his philosophy on wealth fits here, too. Croesus, the rich king he defeated, basically tells him, hoard your gold, keep it locked up.
But Cyrus just rejects that completely. He says riches are for sharing, not harvesting and hiding. He believed giving wealth away to his commanders, his allies, made them living treasuries for him. It bought loyalty, fame, security, things more valuable than gold in a vault.
Loyalty is the ultimate currency.
You got it.
And structurally, for the empire itself, how did he keep control without becoming a micromanager?
Smart checks and balances. He appointed local governors for administration, sure, but he kept direct control over the military commanders in the citadels, the imperial garrisons. That way, no governor could easily raise a private army against him.
Split the power. Civil and military reported separately back to him.
Right. And to make that communication work across a huge empire, he set up the first organized postal system we know of. Relay stations based on how far a horse could reliably ride in a day. Ensured news traveled fast.
Okay, so wrapping this all up.
Yeah.
If you had to distill the core lesson from Cyrus for the listener.
I think it's the combination, really. It wasn't just skill, the strategy, the logistics, the cunning. It was that high skill fused with unwavering internal integrity. understanding that real, lasting power comes from serving and elevating your followers, not dominating them through fear.
To rule the people, you first have to serve them, earn their trust, especially when times are tough.
Exactly. Which brings us back to Croesus, actually. Remember the advice he got from the oracle at Delphi, know yourself, O king? That was supposed to bring happiness.
But Croesus admitted later that false ambition seduced me, and that led to his downfall. He failed to know himself.
Right. Xenophon shows Cyrus as someone who could stumble, get carried away by ambition like with Syazarees, but crucially, he could recognize it and recover. He knew himself well enough to correct course. Croesus couldn't or didn't and paid the price.
So the final thought for you listening.
Yeah.
If even someone like Cyrus, this paragon of leadership, constantly wrestled with ambition and pride, how do you manage that same internal battle in your own life, your own career, especially when success starts whispering that you can relax, that you've arrived? Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.